Hi, I'm Angie Veman, and welcome to Totally Clutch. This is the podcast for women like you to find ways to simplify your business and personal life. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Welcome back to another episode of Totally Clutch, the Clutch Businesses podcast and vlog. I'm your host, Angie Veman, and today we have a really exciting conversation with Amelia Reigstad. And before we dive into it, I want you to just take a minute and just, if you want, close your eyes and just think, have you ever been told by somebody else that you are too aggressive, that you are too passive, that you're too direct, that you lack confidence, and that you need to speak up more? These are all of the things that women are told on a daily basis, and it feels like a freaking minefield. So basically, we're one thing and we're the other thing, right? Like there's no clear direction on where we need to go with the way that we communicate with people, or at least that's what it feels like, unless you know Amelia. So Amelia Reigstad has studied gender and communication in great depth, and she uses what she learned through those studies to encourage and inspire women to use their voice to initiate change and to communicate with everybody that they cross paths with. So this comes into play if you have a career and you're working in corporate America. This comes into play if you are, if you own your own business. This comes into play, I would guess, in even your personal relationships. So welcome to the show, Amelia.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And full disclosure, Amelia is a dear friend of mine. I'm so lucky, and I have been looking forward to this conversation. It's been on my wish list for a long, long time. So I'm super excited that we get to do this.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to see you in action.
Yeah. You want to tell everybody about all of the amazing work that you're doing and
Sure.
how you came to do the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an effective communication consultant and coach. So I work with organizations and individuals really to help them communicate more effectively in the workplace. And I have spent much of my career in communications, but also in education as well. So most recently completing my doctorate degree. And that doctorate degree looked at gender differences in communication styles and how it influences the workplace. So based on the knowledge that I gained from that, I developed also the Woman Empowerment Series, which encourages and inspires women to use their voice to initiate change. So we can delve into some of that fun stuff today.
That's amazing. PhD. Hey, hey. No small feat. That's amazing. And doing it while you're working full time and raising a family.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so good.
Check.
Okay, cool. Yeah, check, and check. Okay, so how have you found that men and women communicate differently from one another?
Sure. So that's not even really an easy question to answer. So I do want to introduce to you, Angie, and you and I have kind of talked about some of this stuff earlier, but also to your listeners, a bit of a theoretical component to some of these differences. So based on research and based on the work of Deborah Tannen, she is a linguistics scholar from Georgetown University. She spent most of her career looking at gender differences and how men and women do communicate differently in the workplace. And much of what I had looked at from a PhD perspective was also the work of Tannen. So I want to introduce you all to this idea of a linguistic style. Okay, so our linguistic style is learned behavior, and we learn our linguistic styles at a really young age. So think 2, 3, 4 years of age, playing on the playground, if you can believe it. And boys and girls tend to play quite differently. So girls will tend to have a singular best friend or a small group of friends. They'll communicate, they'll talk really closely to one another. And the goal of that is to build rapport with one another, to build relationships. Now, boys, on the other hand, play quite differently. They tend to play in larger groups, and they're very much trying to position themselves one up from one another. So they're focused on this hierarchical social order, even at that young age. So it's not that all boys and girls play and develop these styles at the same time and in that way, but for the most part, the research will tell us that, that those styles that were learned at that young age does translate into our adolescence, our young adulthood, being an adult, and then bringing that into the workplace. And that's where some of those differences can come to fruition. It's based on something that we're learning at an incredibly young age.
Yeah, we've been doing the work for a long time. And what kind of misconceptions, or I guess, what does that look like? What do those differences in communication cause? Do they
Yeah.
cause misconceptions? Do they cause misunderstandings?
So it's something that I also want to make clear too is that much of the differences that we see in the workplace actually is based on our personality traits.
Mm.
Okay, so our personality traits are fixed characteristics. It's really challenging to change that, right? So as an example, if we're interacting with a narcissistic boss, like good luck. Like you're not going to be able to change that person's behavior. But that's what in a lot of the work that I do, I
Wait,
really
does
yeah.
everybody hear that? You can't change that behavior.
Yeah, stop.
Yeah.
Stop wasting your time.
Yeah.
But, in a lot of the work that I do, I'm always encouraging, my clients or individuals that I coach to really build an understanding of your communication style, right? Because our communication styles are different. We have the ability as communicators to modify or adapt our communication style depending on who we're interacting with. So yes, there are some differences, but we have to be really careful too that we're not just slotting men and women into these boxes. So somebody will say, okay, well, men are more aggressive, women are more passive. But yeah, some are, but there's a lot of aggressive women. And
Right.
when we're thinking about communication, right, like we can have challenging conversations with males, females, all genders, right? So we have to be really careful that we're not pigeonholing, men and women into these boxes. We have to consider stereotypes and the roles that plays as well. So, it's all about really like figuring out how you can communicate better and navigate through some of those tough conversations the best that you can, but recognizing that those personality traits really do play a significant role and we can't necessarily change that. So how are you individually going to get through that conversation?
And so if you change your communication style for a certain person, a boss, a coworker, whatever, what's what's the benefit of doing that? Like, what's the
Mm-hmm.
outcome of changing that communication style
It
to
it absolutely helps with conflict resolution.
Mm.
So for your listeners too, there is a wonderful communication style assessment that I've used for close to 20 years, and it's called Straight Talk. It's a free assessment. You can go to it online. It was developed by somebody by the name of Eric Douglas, based out of Sacramento. And it's a wonderful tool to help you build an understanding not only about how you communicate, but how the people in your life communicate. And then it allows you and gives you some good tips to kind of navigate through those conversations, both personally and professionally. Right.
Mhm.
So you can have your spouse or your partner take it, see how that communicates. I mean, I had my husband do it and we're quite similar, but it offers us tools of how we can communicate more effectively. And
Right.
it's a great tool to have colleagues take as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, I love the way that I mean, there's just something about the way that you just said that made me realize that I think the that approach is so
Mhm.
amazing because ultimately everybody wants to be heard and everybody wants to understand each other, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
but I think that we lose sight it's easy to
Mhm.
lose sight of that and then it just becomes about being heard or about
Right.
getting what you want
Mhm.
or something like that. And it's really about yeah, there is more of a coming together in that
Mhm.
approach than I think I initially realized.
Yeah, and it also though depends too on the individual, and that goes back to the personality traits though too, because it is about educating ourselves. It is about building an understanding of how we communicate, how our spouses, our partners, our family communicates, our colleagues, how do they communicate day to day in a workplace environment. But it takes time and it takes effort, and not everybody is willing to learn how to communicate better. right? And that's where we've got some of those tough people in the workplace that we can't interact with because they're not willing to put the work in to try to reduce conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. The work is hard. It is
It
hard.
is.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. And so you're saying that this can be done, or these tools can be used in the workplace. They can be used at home. They can be used
Yeah,
with friends and family, really
absolutely.
anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. And then I guess what are a few things, and I guess I'm conscious now of not saying what are a few things that women can do to ensure that their message is heard, but what can
Sure.
people do
Yeah.
to ensure that their message is heard?
And the thing is, though, I mean, let's be frank. I mean, there's certainly some differences like with how men and women communicate. And for the most part, it is easier for men in the workplace than it is women. I mean,
Mhm.
call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can say, what can women do? I mean, that's the whole point of some of the work, that I do. I do want to, though, introduce a little bit again, and this goes back to the theory, but I take great pride in being an academic, but also really being a professional and a practitioner and bringing this knowledge to people. Because, if you're not in academia, you generally don't know some of these things. So you had asked earlier about some of the differences, and I want you to give thought to something that is called a conversation ritual. So this is a reoccurring pattern of behavior that if we don't recognize it as a conversation ritual, that's where some of the challenges can come to fruition. So the example that I always like to share is, as women, we are told, or we have the inclination to over apologize. Okay, we say I'm sorry quite often. Now, research will say that men tend to not over apologize. Women do, but women use it as a transition in a conversation. And they use it as a way of showing concern. But if we continually over apologize in the workplace, right, that can start to show that maybe we're not as confident as our male counterparts. So there is this, women versus men to some extent in, some of the things that I've studied and some of the things that I, help my clients with as well.
Yeah. This is like, I totally was not planning on going this direction, but why is it so important to appear confident?
Mm-hmm. Well, that to me is like something that women, in the workplace, we are some, not all, of course, aren't as confident as our male
Mhm. Yeah.
counterparts rather. And, building our confidence is really, really important. I mean, that links to, you would ask kind of like, what can women do or what can people do? I am a firm believer in, building our confidence as much as we can, but also being our authentic
Mhm.
selves.
Yeah.
Right. And that is something that, I've really started to spend a lot of time thinking about because we're constantly invited to be ourselves, right? If we're in a conversation with a coworker and we've got, this horrible meeting coming up with our boss that we don't get along with, somebody will say, well, just go in there and be yourself.
Right.
Right. So let's just be ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Be fearlessly authentic, bravely be you. It's my
Yeah.
favorite quote.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, and
Yeah.
I think there's something there. I don't know. It's just so interesting because I think what confidence means has
Mm-hmm.
changed, like, or the
Yeah.
definition of confidence. I mean, obviously, it's always been the same, but for me, I feel like it's changed over the course. Like confidence
Mm-hmm.
used to seem, in my 20s, teens, 20s, 30s, seemed like something that I was grasping for,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I had to
Mm-hmm.
become something different in order to be confident. And now in my 40s,
Mm-hmm.
which are awesome, but in my 40s, it's something that like in order to be vulnerable, I feel like I'm going kind of all over the place
Mm-hmm.
with this, but it's that confidence is really just about being you and accepting
Yeah.
all of the parts of you and accepting and being vulnerable about
Mm-hmm.
those things
Yeah.
that, you don't love about yourself, those things you didn't do awesome, those
Right.
things, I think this is a conversation that we have in our house a lot is, you're always going to offend somebody. You're always going
Mm-hmm.
to say something that's hurtful. Not always, but like those things are always going to pop up, but it's really about like how you come back from them and how you acknowledge them and how you know, like it's cool. It's okay to, you know, to not be perfect all of the time, but it's not okay to not be perfect and pretend as if you are. Like
No,
just
definitely.
sweep it.
And I think too, going off of that confidence bit is that sometimes, you know, as women, especially, we are fearful of being ourselves and we're fearful of being confident because we don't want to be considered arrogant.
Yeah.
Confidence is a beautiful trait and it's a very respected trait, right? So we can absolutely be our authentic, confident selves and not be arrogant in what we do. We can go through self-promotion. Both you and I are business owners. We have to promote ourselves in a variety of different ways. And that's part of being an entrepreneur. And, you know, that's not us being arrogant because we did something cool and got some press about it, right? Like, sorry, that's us building our business and that's us being confident, accomplished women. And we have to be okay doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so, I just love the way that you're saying, I don't know. I love how this is being presented. And I love how it sounds easy to do this, right? It doesn't sound easy to be confident, but it does sound easy to be authentic and, you know, and to really let yourself show. And I think, you know, talking about business is so important. I think, you know, we both have businesses where we're providing services that help other folks, other women, other people to really, you know, harness their full potential and put that out into the world. And so in some ways it's really just getting clear on why you're doing what you're doing. So if you have a business, if you're in a job just because, it's going to be really hard to be confident in that. It's going to be really hard to be authentic because you're not sure the intention isn't there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, fun. So how do you coach people to find that in themselves?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's, you know, from a coaching perspective, you know, my process is really organic and is really based on the individuals that I work with. I mean, again, I have the advantage of having that academic side and the practitioner professional side. So I'm able to meld that together because
like
there
the
are a lot of
perfect mix.
reasons we do what we do.
Yeah.
You know, there is a lot of theory behind things that if you're not in that academic realm, you know, or if you're not necessarily interested in, you know, Googling something or trying to find out a reason why for something online, you know, I kind of take that approach of, you know, we do this, but there's some reasoning behind it. There's some psychology behind it. And it's really about myself, you know, building a relationship with the individual that I'm working with and really trying to understand, you know, what their specific challenges are. But much of my work starts with really building an understanding of your communication style.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, it's key, right? I mean, having that awareness is just, you can't go anywhere without it.
No. And that's the thing though, too. I mean, a lot of people don't necessarily have the awareness.
Yeah.
But it's also though, I mean, and I don't say that, you know, as negative. It just, you know, sometimes we're just not thinking about these kinds of things, right?
Totally.
We're in our day to day, we do our thing, but if there's maybe somebody that you interact with on a day to day basis where you're like, gosh, like, why can't I get through to this person, right? That's when we can start doing our homework and spending the time to really delve into it and to figure out like, okay, well, I communicate this way, this person communicates that way. You know, how can we navigate through these challenges and make our communication more effective?
Yeah. Yeah, and we're just not taught it, right? I mean, I think everybody in this country at least gets a free pass on not being good at communicating because I didn't have my first interpersonal communication class until I was a freshman in college. And you know, and what you're saying is back in kindergarten when I was on the playground, I started to those skills were required from that moment on. That's, you know, that's a long time to go just kind of winging it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's too, I mean, we are influenced by society. We are influenced by learned behaviors. I mean, there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, huge. Okay, this is inspiring. I mean, I hope that everybody watching and listening is, feeling more than anything like I think you just said this, that it's more of just a problem to solve. It's not an unsolvable problem, and it's not impossible. And, there is a way to do this. We just have to approach it, I think, a little bit differently than most of us are taught.
Yeah. And I mean, I have been studying communication and linguistics for 20 years, and I can still use help with communicating, right? Like for me, I know I can go from 0 to 60 pretty dang quick if I'm in a conflict. But I've now learned that, no, like for me, I have to literally take a deep breath, collect my thoughts, and I have to do that so that I don't go from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
Right. But I know that about myself now. I know that now. I didn't know that then. So like you do have to take the time. Like if you care about improvement and development, then, you do have to put in that work.
Yeah. And speaking of work, do you want to tell us about the Women Empowerment series that you have coming up?
Yeah. So a little bit of background of the Women Empowerment series. So this was in response to the unfortunate passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who passed away in September of 2021. No, we're in September of 2020. And I didn't really spend too much time, or I didn't really know what she was responsible for. And she was responsible for women being able to use credit cards. So it was fascinating. And of course, during that, time, it was the political landscape was crazy. And I wanted to do something to move her mission forward. So the Woman Empowerment series came to fruition sitting on my couch. My husband named it, so kudos to him. He created that name. And it's all about encouraging and inspiring women to use their voice to initiate change. So everything from communication styles, gender differences, stereotypes, authenticity, all of this is in a 4-part series. And so we've had nearly 50 women go through the program over the past year. And we have a brand new series called Evolution, which is kicking off on January 12th, which I'm really excited about. It's taking some of the original content as a bit of a refresher, but then we're delving into other really important topics that women care about: work-life balance, perfectionism, developing male allies in our places of employment, resiliency, successful leadership. Angie's coming on to talk about burnout and how we navigate through some of that. So really excited for the 4-part series that starts in January.
That's great. And anybody can sign up, right? So I've got your website up here on the screen. So do you want to, it's ameliareigstad.com, and you can register there. It's open to anybody.
And the beauty of it too, it's virtual. So it's a virtual series, which has been really fun too, because we've had women in Canada, all across the US, and it's for an hour and a half once a week for 4 weeks. So, and I do it over the lunch hour. So we go from 12 to 1:30 Central Time. So, it doesn't take away too much time from your day to day. But yeah, you can go to the website. There's lots of information there, and then it will take you to the link to register on Eventbrite.
That's great. And one of the things too that I don't know if you already said this or not, but I think one of the awesome things that you have set up is for people to be able to be reimbursed by their employers. And one of the things I think, so that's awesome because, not having to spend your own money on things is great. But also I think it's awesome because it starts those conversations within the workplace that I think are really kind of challenging to navigate and to initiate. And it starts to show people, that you're working with how important these things are, and, and that they are, they're kind of required in order for things to work well.
And that's the thing. I mean, the majority, so many places of employment have professional development funds that people can use. So on the Eventbrite page, you can scroll down to the bottom, and I've just got a copy and paste template that you can copy and paste into an email, change it as you see fit, send it off to whoever needs to approve your budget or your spending. And hopefully that helps. That shows that, you've really thought about it, and that, it's something that you want to do.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Yeah. Well, anything else that that you want to share that we haven't had a chance to talk about?
No, I would just think, be your authentic selves. The tagline of the Women Empowerment Series is communicate, be empowered, make a difference. And I'm really happy that I've been able to do that. And the communication styles, it's really important. And I hope that, you guys will all delve in and learn a little bit more about yourself, but also the people that you interact with.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Too important to ignore.
Totally. Yeah. It's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Amelia. This is so great. The information that you have, the wealth of information that you have is incredible. And I also think that this is just a topic that a lot of people aren't talking about. It was totally off my radar until, I found out about the work that you were doing. And so and it is so important. It's a total game changer.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much. And please, everyone, go check out our website. I hope to see you in the Women Empowerment Series. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Rate and review this podcast and share it with all of your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you're leaving with some great things that can help you move from hustle to flow, because I believe in you and your business. Until next time.